As the dark blanket of night settled over Grayville, Dr. Ryan Brooks stepped out of the local hospital, exhausted after a grueling 14-hour shift. Ryan had been a dedicated physician in Grayville for years, working tirelessly to care for every patient in the small town. Tonight, however, he felt the weariness in his bones, a heavy exhaustion weighing down his shoulders. The cool night air was a brief relief from the sterile fluorescent lights of the hospital hallways. Just as he reached for his car keys, a faint, soft cry broke through the silence. Ryan paused, his instincts as a doctor sharpening. It was an unusual sound, so quiet and vulnerable, echoing near the hospital's entrance. His heart quickened with a mix of concern and curiosity. As he moved toward the sound, his eyes scanned the darkened lot until he noticed something. A small, tattered blanket bundled in the corner beside a bench. Ryan's breath hitched as he approached. A baby, a tiny infant, lying alone and helpless, wrapped in nothing but a frayed, worn blanket. His mind raced. Who would abandon a baby in the dark like this? His heart ached as he knelt beside the small bundle, gently cradling the child in his arms. The baby's eyes, a soft, deep brown, opened and locked onto his. And in that moment, Ryan felt an unexplainable bond form. The baby's skin was a rich, warm brown, his hair a soft mess of curls. As he held the tiny boy, Ryan felt a connection so intense, it seemed to ignite something deep within him. He couldn't leave this child alone. Without a second thought, he turned back toward the hospital, carrying the baby close. His mind raced with questions, but one answer was clear. He wasn't going to abandon this child. Inside the hospital, the staff quickly gathered around, each as shocked and intrigued as Ryan. They began to check the baby's vitals, making calls to social services. But Ryan's thoughts drifted elsewhere. His own house was quiet, lonely, a hollow space he often returned to after long shifts. For years, he had poured his energy into his work, yet he always felt something missing, a void that grew larger over time. Now, as he held this small life, he sensed that this child might be the answer to that emptiness. Hours passed, and the night faded into dawn. Still holding the child, Ryan met with a social worker who arrived early in the morning. "If no one steps forward, he'll be placed in the foster system," she explained, her voice clinical but kind. The thought twisted his heart. The idea of this child, whom he had already named Leo in his mind, being passed from one temporary home to another, felt unbearable. Leo deserved stability, love, and the sense of belonging that only a real home could provide. "I'll take him," Ryan declared, his voice steady and full of resolve. He was shocked by his own words, yet he knew they were true. The social worker hesitated, her eyebrows raised in surprise. "This is a significant decision, Dr. Brooks," she said cautiously. "Especially in a town like Grayville. People here might not understand, and raising a child, especially one who looks different, may come with challenges." But Ryan's eyes remained fixed on the baby. "I've never been more certain of anything in my life," he replied. "This child deserves a home, and I have so much love to give him." And so, the decision was made. Ryan began the adoption process, vowing to love and protect Leo, despite the challenges that might come. He knew Grayville, with its deeply set traditions and small-town gossip, wouldn't make it easy. Yet, as he held Leo close, he felt a fierce protectiveness take root. He was ready to face whatever came their way. Dr. Ryan Brooks had always been someone the town of Grayville respected. With his calm demeanor and tireless work ethic, he had earned his place as the town's most trusted doctor. People turned to him for care, wisdom, and often comfort in times of sickness and grief. Yet bringing Leo home had set off an unexpected wave of gossip, skepticism, and even silent judgment that Ryan could feel echoing through the town's tight-knit streets. From the outside, Ryan's life might have seemed lonely. He was a single man in his mid-30s who, after losing his parents young, had been raised by his grandparents until they too passed. Having no immediate family, Ryan had poured himself into his career, the hospital becoming a second home where he often worked long shifts, covering for other doctors and doing what he could for the people of Grayville. But despite the respect he garnered, it became clear that adopting Leo would place him and his character under a harsh spotlight. Within the first week of Leo's arrival, news spread quickly. Ryan knew he couldn't keep his new role as a father a secret in a town where every new face and unexpected event was noticed and discussed. Grayville was the kind of place where neighbors greeted each other by name, and it wasn't uncommon for Mrs. Marlowe from down the street to bake a casserole for anyone who seemed even a bit under the weather. But that closeness also meant everyone knew each other's business, and opinions ran deep. It was on the second Sunday after bringing Leo home that Ryan received an invitation from his aunt and uncle, the closest thing he had to family in Grayville. Aunt Lydia and Uncle George, both well into their 70s, had been pillars of support for Ryan throughout his life. They lived in a quaint two-story house with a white picket fence, a home that had hosted countless Sunday dinners and holiday gatherings. But this time, the atmosphere felt different. Ryan arrived with Leo nestled in his arms. The baby's small, curious eyes roamed the room as they stepped inside, his tiny fingers gripping the fabric of Ryan's shirt. Aunt Lydia greeted them with a warm, if slightly nervous smile. Uncle George, however, looked visibly uncomfortable. The dinner began quietly, with the clinking of silverware filling the gaps in conversation. Ryan sensed the tension in the room, waiting for the inevitable moment when someone would address the situation. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, Uncle George cleared his throat, setting his fork down with a slight clatter. "Ryan," he began, his tone heavy, "we need to talk about this decision of yours." Ryan straightened, his protective instincts kicking in as he looked from George to Lydia. "Leo is my son now, Uncle George. He's not a decision. He's family." Lydia reached out, placing a gentle hand on Ryan's. "We're just concerned, dear," she said, her voice soft. "Grayville, it's not like other places. You know how people here can be." Ryan understood what she was implying, but he was determined. "I love him," he replied firmly. "Leo is part of my life now. I'll do whatever it takes to give him a good home." Uncle George sighed, his brow furrowing. "But Ryan, you're a doctor. Your job, it's demanding. How will you manage both your career and raising a child, especially one who doesn't look like the rest of us?" The comment hit Ryan harder than he'd expected. "Leo's skin color doesn't change the fact that he's my son," Ryan said, his voice steady but laced with frustration. "I'm fully capable of balancing my responsibilities, and I have enough love for him." Aunt Lydia's eyes were misty with concern. "We only want what's best for you," she murmured, "and for Leo. But raising a child here in Grayville, it won't be easy." Ryan knew their concern came from a place of love, yet it felt like a warning he wasn't prepared to heed. He held Leo closer, sensing the boy's sleepy warmth against him. "Leo deserves a family," he said finally, "and I intend to be that family, regardless of how hard it might be." As he left that evening, Ryan felt both a renewed sense of purpose and the weight of his family's unspoken fears. He was determined to prove that love could conquer prejudice, even in a place as small and set in its ways as Grayville. The following weeks were a trial of patience and endurance. Every time Ryan ventured out with Leo, he noticed the stares, the quick glances people threw his way before turning to whisper to each other. At the grocery store, at the post office, even at the local diner where he often stopped for coffee before work, there was an undeniable shift in how people looked at him. Some friends distanced themselves, and he couldn't ignore the subtle change in tone when his colleagues at the hospital mentioned Leo. They used to greet him with warmth, but now there was an awkwardness that hadn't been there before. One afternoon, as he was leaving the hospital after a long shift, he overheard a conversation between two nurses. "I heard Dr. Brooks adopted a black baby," one whispered, not realizing Ryan was within earshot. "Can you believe that? A single man, no less." The other nurse responded with a sigh. It's bound to be tough, especially in this town. People aren't exactly open-minded around here. The comment stung, but Ryan kept his head high, focusing instead on Leo. At home, Ryan poured his heart into being the best father he could. He spent hours reading about parenting, learning how to care for a baby, and making his house feel like a warm, safe haven. His days were filled with the joyful chaos of feeding, changing, and soothing Leo. And though it was exhausting, he wouldn't have traded it for anything. The joy of watching Leo grow, of seeing his first smiles and hearing his first gurgles, far outweighed the disapproval from the outside world. Yet, in his quiet moments, Ryan couldn't deny the hurt and loneliness that came with feeling like an outsider in his own town. When Leo turned 5, the time came for him to start school. By then, he had grown into a bright, curious child, with an insatiable love for books and a quick wit that often took Ryan by surprise. But as much as Ryan tried to prepare him for school, he couldn't prepare him for the reactions he would face. On Leo's first day, Ryan walked him to the school gates, feeling both pride and trepidation. Leo clung to his hand, his big brown eyes scanning the playground nervously. Ryan knelt beside him, giving him an encouraging smile. "You're going to do great, Leo," he said softly. "Just be yourself." Leo nodded, his small face set in determination. "I'll try, Dad." As they walked through the gate, Ryan noticed a few of the other parents glancing their way, some with expressions of curiosity, others with thinly veiled judgment. He ignored them, focusing on giving Leo a reassuring wave before heading back to the hospital. The first few weeks went by without incident, but soon Ryan began to notice changes in Leo. He was quieter, his usual excitement dulled. One evening, as Ryan was helping him with his homework, Leo looked up, his eyes filled with sadness. "Dad," he whispered, "why do the other kids at school look different from me?" Ryan's heart ached at the question he had known would come, but had hoped to delay. He sat down, choosing his words carefully. "Leo, people come in all different colors and shapes. It's what makes us unique and special. But sometimes when people don't understand something, they can be unkind." Leo nodded slowly, absorbing his father's words. But Ryan could see that the burden of feeling different was beginning to weigh on him. And though he tried his best to support Leo, he knew that the schoolyard whispers and the exclusion from classmates would leave scars that even he couldn't heal. As Leo grew older, the challenges only intensified. He came home one day with a bruise on his arm and a downcast expression. When Ryan asked him about it, Leo shrugged, saying he had fallen, but Ryan could sense there was more to the story. After some gentle probing, Leo finally admitted that some of the older kids had pushed him around, calling him names he didn't understand but knew were meant to hurt. Ryan's heart broke as he held his son close, reassuring him that he was loved and perfect just as he was. But he felt a deep frustration that he couldn't shield Leo from the cruelty of others. Grayville's prejudice had seeped into its youngest generation, and it pained Ryan to see his son bear the brunt of it. Determined to give Leo a sense of pride and belonging, Ryan began teaching him about different cultures, showing him the beauty in diversity. They spent evenings reading about great figures in history who had overcome adversity, drawing strength from their stories. Little by little, Ryan watched Leo's confidence rebuild, his spirit growing stronger despite the challenges he faced. But as much as Ryan tried to protect him, he knew that the struggle was far from over. The people of Grayville were set in their ways, and it would take more than one loving father and a resilient son to change their minds. In the quiet town of Grayville, life moved at a predictable, almost sleepy pace. Neighbors knew each other by name, children played in the same backyards their parents had, and everyone assumed that nothing could disrupt the seemingly unshakable routines of daily life. But all that changed one cold autumn day, when whispers of a strange illness began to surface. It started slowly, a single child complaining of a fever and fatigue. The child's parents thought it was just a common cold, something that would pass with rest and warm soup. But within days, other children began to show similar symptoms. Parents grew anxious as fevers rose higher, their children's skin flushed and clammy, and their energy drained to the point where they could barely lift their heads. The school sent out notices, warning parents to keep their children home if they showed any signs of illness. Dr. Ryan Brooks was among the first to notice the patterns. Working at the hospital, he saw the increasing number of young patients with eerily similar symptoms. His unease grew with each case, and by the end of the week, he knew that this was more than just an ordinary flu season. At home, Ryan shared his concerns with Leo. The boy, now in his early teens, listened intently, his face serious. Leo had always been fascinated by science, often spending hours with books about medicine and nature that his father brought home from the hospital. Ryan had noticed his son's natural curiosity and encouraged it. And now, Leo seemed to grasp the gravity of the situation with a maturity beyond his years. "Dad?" Leo asked one evening, as they sat together in their small living room. "Is there anything I can do to help?" Ryan smiled at his son's eagerness, though he felt a pang of worry. He didn't want Leo to feel burdened by the town's troubles, yet he also recognized his son's genuine desire to make a difference. After a pause, he nodded. "Well, Leo," he said thoughtfully, "I could use a partner to help me research. There might be clues about this illness that we can find in nature or in the medical books we have." Leo's face lit up with determination. "Then let's do it, Dad. I'll do everything I can." And so, the father and son embarked on a quest that would test both their resilience and their bond. As the days passed, the situation in Grayville grew more dire. The hospital was soon overwhelmed with patients, mostly children, suffering from high fevers, severe fatigue, and in some cases, respiratory issues. Desperate parents flooded the hospital waiting rooms, their faces etched with worry, and Ryan worked around the clock, hardly stopping to eat or sleep. His colleagues were equally exhausted, their voices hushed with tension as they moved through the hospital corridors. Ryan's determination was fueled not only by his duty as a doctor, but also by his deep compassion for the community. Despite the prejudice he and Leo had faced, he couldn't ignore the pain of the parents and children who had come to him for help. This was his town too, and he was committed to doing everything in his power to find a cure. At home, Leo worked tirelessly, his room filled with open books and pages of notes. He researched local plants, natural remedies, and the effects of various environmental factors on health. Ryan was both proud and amazed at Leo's dedication. His son had grown into a thoughtful, compassionate young man, determined to help others even when they hadn't always been kind to him. One evening, as Ryan returned home after an exhausting shift, Leo greeted him at the door with a glimmer of excitement in his eyes. "Dad, I think I found something," Leo said, holding up a book with a page marked by a small piece of paper. "There's a plant that grows around Grayville. It's called the silver willow. Some old medical texts mention it can cause symptoms similar to what the kids are experiencing if it's consumed or inhaled in large quantities." Ryan's exhaustion faded as he listened to his son, hope sparking in his chest. "That's incredible, Leo. If we can test this theory, it might lead us to a cure." Without wasting another moment, they gathered samples of the silver willow from a nearby park and brought them to the hospital lab. Together, they worked late into the night, testing and analyzing, hoping to confirm Leo's theory. The results were promising, showing a potential link between the plant and the mysterious illness. It was the breakthrough they had been searching for. News of Ryan and Leo's research spread quickly through Grayville. Parents who had once whispered about them with judgment now looked to them with hope and gratitude. Some came to the hospital in person, apologizing for the way they had treated the Brooks family, their faces filled with remorse and desperation. It was a strange reversal for Ryan, who had grown used to the town's coldness. Now, these same people were turning to him, begging for help, their pride cast aside in the face of their children's suffering. One of the first to reach out was Tom, the father of one of Leo's classmates, who had often been vocal in his disapproval of Ryan's adoption. "Dr. Brooks," Tom said, his voice unsteady as he approached Ryan in the hospital hallway. I know I haven't always been supportive, but my son, he's so sick, and you're our only hope. I'm sorry for everything I said. Please, can you help him?" Ryan looked into the man's weary, pleading eyes, and something softened in him. He knew the pain of a parent fearing for their child's life, and he couldn't hold on to resentment in the face of such raw vulnerability. "Of course, Tom," Ryan replied, his voice steady. "We're doing everything we can to find a cure." As more parents reached out, Ryan felt a bittersweet sense of fulfillment. On one hand, he was finally receiving the respect and acknowledgement he had longed for. But he also knew that it had taken a crisis, one that had threatened their children, to make the town see past their prejudice. Still, he was grateful for the change, no matter how it had come about. Leo continued to assist his father, spending hours at the hospital, where he became a familiar face among the staff. Nurses and doctors alike were impressed by his dedication and his natural gift for scientific observation. Some of the nurses even remarked to Ryan how proud he should be of Leo, how he was growing into a remarkable young man. One afternoon, Leo was poring over some patient charts when Dr. Kim, one of Ryan's colleagues, approached him. "Leo, you're really quite something," she said, smiling warmly. "I don't think I've ever seen someone your age work so hard to help others. You're making a real difference here." Leo blushed, his face lighting up with pride. "Thank you, Dr. Kim. I just want to do my part." The two of them continued working together, and Leo found himself growing more confident with each passing day. He learned how to run basic lab tests, analyze samples, and record data, skills he had only dreamed of mastering. With each discovery they made, he felt closer to his father, and he knew that their work was bringing them both a sense of purpose and unity. But the pressures of the crisis also took their toll. Late one night, as Leo was about to leave the lab, he found Ryan slumped over his desk, his face etched with exhaustion and worry. "Dad," Leo said softly, placing a hand on his father's shoulder. "You need to rest. We'll find the cure together, but you can't help anyone if you're too tired to think straight." Ryan looked up, his eyes red-rimmed but filled with gratitude. "Thank you, Leo. I don't know what I'd do without you." Together, they left the hospital, walking side by side through the quiet streets of Grayville, their bond stronger than ever. With Ryan and Leo's dedication, the town finally began to see a glimmer of hope. The treatments based on their research showed positive results, and children who had been gravely ill began to recover. Parents wept with relief as their children's fevers broke, color returning to their cheeks. The once silent town grew lively with the sounds of laughter and chatter, the heavy cloud of fear slowly lifting. One by one, the people of Grayville came forward, offering their thanks to Ryan and Leo. Some brought food, others left notes of gratitude, and many expressed heartfelt apologies for the way they had once viewed the Brooks family. It was as if the town itself was healing, not only from the illness, but from the deep-seated prejudice that had kept them divided for so long. The crisis had forced the people of Grayville to confront their biases, to see the humanity in one another. And for Ryan and Leo, it was a moment of redemption, a long-awaited acknowledgement that they belonged in Grayville, that they were a family as real and worthy as any other. Standing in the hospital one evening, surrounded by the smiles and embraces of those who had once scorned him, Ryan felt a profound sense of peace. Leo stood by his side, his face beaming with pride and joy. Together, they had weathered the storm, proving that love and compassion could overcome even the darkest moments. The hospital in Grayville was filled with a quiet tension as Ryan and Leo worked side by side, poring over the data and test results from their latest research on the mysterious illness. After weeks of relentless investigation, their theory about the silver willow plant seemed closer to confirmation. It was an exhausting process. Each test required meticulous attention to detail, and both father and son were pushing their limits. Yet, as Ryan watched Leo working with such focus, He felt a swell of pride. This journey had brought them closer than ever. In the early hours of a gray, misty morning, they finally obtained the results they had been hoping for. The chemical compounds in the silver willow plant matched those in the blood samples of the sick children, confirming that exposure to this plant was the likely cause of the outbreak. For Ryan, this discovery was both exhilarating and a huge relief. After weeks of fear and uncertainty, he could finally see a path forward. "This is it, Leo," Ryan exclaimed, his voice breaking the silence in the lab. "We did it. This could be the breakthrough we've been praying for." Leo's eyes shone with excitement. "Does this mean we can help them? That they'll start to get better?" Ryan nodded, his voice thick with emotion. "Yes, son. This means we can finally start treating them effectively." With this newfound hope, they quickly prepared a treatment plan. Using the compounds found in the silver willow as a guide, Ryan and his team developed a counteracting remedy, a series of treatments designed to cleanse the body of the harmful effects of the plant. It was a delicate process, but Ryan was determined to move forward with precision and care. As word spread of their discovery, families began bringing their children to the hospital in droves. Parents, once filled with dread and desperation, now looked at Ryan and Leo with a mixture of awe and gratitude. The first treatments were administered cautiously, and the initial results were nothing short of miraculous. Children who had been confined to hospital beds, pale and weak, began showing signs of improvement. Fevers broke, color returned to their cheeks, and their once dull eyes sparkled with life again. The townspeople, who had once regarded the Brooks family with suspicion and prejudice, now watched with open admiration. Ryan had always been respected for his skills as a doctor, but now he and Leo were being hailed as heroes, their dedication and compassion shining as a beacon of hope for the entire town. The transformation in the community's attitude was almost palpable. People who had previously kept their distance now approached Ryan with open hearts, their faces softened by gratitude and remorse. Tom, the father who had once criticized Ryan's decision to adopt Leo, was among the first to come forward with an apology. "Dr. Brooks," Tom began, his voice unsteady. I don't have the words to express how sorry I am. I know I was wrong. Seeing what you and Leo have done, it's made me realize how foolish I was." Ryan looked at Tom, his face calm but introspective. He had long since forgiven the people of Grayville for their initial hostility, but hearing the apology lifted a weight he hadn't realized he was carrying. "Thank you, Tom," he replied simply. "We did what anyone would have done. Leo and I are just glad we could help." Tom nodded, his eyes welling with tears. "Please, let me know if there's anything I can do to make it up to you." Over the following days, more townspeople came forward to express their gratitude and regret. Some brought home-cooked meals, others wrote heartfelt notes, and a few even volunteered to help at the hospital, wanting to support the Brooks family in any way they could. For Ryan and Leo, these gestures, though small, felt monumental. They were no longer outsiders. They were finally part of the community. As the town continued to recover, Leo became something of a local celebrity. He was no longer just Ryan's adopted son, but a young scientist in his own right. Teachers at school praised his intelligence and curiosity, and his classmates, once distant, now looked at him with respect and admiration. One afternoon, as Leo was leaving school, a group of younger students approached him with wide eyes and shy smiles. "Leo," one of them said timidly, "we heard that you helped your dad find the cure. That's really cool." Leo blushed, a proud smile tugging at his lips. "Thanks. I just wanted to help. My dad's the real hero, though." Another child chimed in. "My little sister was really sick, but now she's getting better. Thank you, Leo." In that moment, Leo felt an overwhelming sense of purpose. He wasn't just the boy who had once been teased for being different. He was someone who had made a real difference. He looked at the children around him, grateful for the acceptance he had longed for, and felt a renewed determination to pursue his passion for science. He wanted to keep learning, to keep helping others. When he told Ryan about the encounter later that evening, Ryan's heart swelled with pride. He had always known that Leo was special, but seeing the impact his son had made filled him with a joy that words couldn't express. As the crisis subsided and the children recovered, Grayville itself seemed to undergo a transformation. The illness had exposed the town's vulnerabilities, forcing people to confront not only their fears, but also their prejudices. Families who had once held tightly to old ways of thinking began to see the importance of empathy and acceptance. The local school even implemented a new science club, inspired by Leo's passion for learning and discovery. Ryan worked with the school to ensure that children of all backgrounds could come together, fostering an environment where curiosity and kindness were encouraged. The town's newfound sense of unity was evident everywhere. Neighbors who had once been strangers came together to share meals. Parents organized community events, and the park where Leo had once faced ridicule became a lively gathering place, filled with laughter and shared experiences. For Ryan and Leo, these changes were a testament to the power of compassion and resilience. Grayville was no longer a place of quiet judgment, but a community that embraced diversity and looked forward to a brighter future. One warm evening, the mayor of Grayville organized a town gathering in the park to formally recognize Ryan and Leo's contributions. People arrived in droves, filling the space with laughter and excited chatter. Families who had once distanced themselves from the Brooks family now looked at them with open admiration, their expressions filled with warmth and respect. The mayor, a tall, kind-eyed woman named Susan, stepped onto the small stage that had been set up near the park's fountain. She cleared her throat, and the crowd quieted, all eyes on her. "Ladies and gentlemen," she began, her voice carrying a note of reverence, "we are gathered here not only to celebrate the recovery of our children, but to honor two remarkable individuals who have shown us the true meaning of courage and compassion." Susan gestured for Ryan and Leo to join her on the stage. As they walked forward, the crowd erupted into applause, their cheers echoing through the park. Leo glanced at his father, his eyes wide with amazement, and Ryan squeezed his shoulder, sharing a proud smile. "Dr. Ryan Brooks," Susan continued, "has been a cornerstone of our town, always there for us in times of need, and his son Leo has shown us that greatness knows no age. Together, they have reminded us of the importance of kindness, resilience, and unity. On behalf of Grayville, I extend our deepest gratitude." The applause swelled again, and one by one, people stepped forward to offer their thanks. Tom and his family were among them, each one offering a personal apology and a heartfelt expression of gratitude. There were tears, hugs, and promises to build a better, more inclusive community. As the night wore on, Ryan and Leo sat together on a bench, watching as families laughed and children played in the park. For the first time in years, Ryan felt a profound sense of belonging. The journey had been long and difficult, but they had not only survived, they had thrived. He turned to Leo, his heart brimming with pride. "You know, son, none of this would have been possible without you. You've taught me more than I could ever teach you." Leo looked up at his father, his eyes shining with gratitude. "You're the one who showed me what it means to be brave, Dad. I just followed your example." They sat in comfortable silence, each reflecting on the journey that had brought them here. Grayville was no longer just a place where they lived. It was their home, a community that had grown and changed, just as they had. In the months that followed, Ryan and Leo continued their work, with Ryan focusing on his medical practice and Leo diving deeper into his studies. Their lives were no longer overshadowed by prejudice, but illuminated by the love and support of a town that had come to see them as family. As they walked home that night, hand in hand, Ryan felt an overwhelming sense of peace. They had faced the challenges together, and in doing so, they had changed not only their own lives, but also the hearts of everyone in Grayville. As the seasons turned and Grayville continued to heal, the town transformed in ways Ryan and Leo could have only dreamed. The illness had passed, and in its wake, Grayville emerged as a place no longer bound by prejudice or fear. People had begun to see one another with new eyes, recognizing the humanity and dignity in everyone, no matter how different they might appear. For Ryan and Leo, life had settled into a peaceful rhythm. The school's new science club flourished, with Leo as its founder and inspiration. Children of all backgrounds joined, their enthusiasm for learning overshadowing any differences they might have. They conducted experiments, explored the natural world, and, under Leo's guidance, shared ideas without fear of judgment. The club meetings became a haven of curiosity and friendship, where Grayville's young minds came together to build a future marked by understanding and kindness. One crisp autumn day, Ryan and Leo decided to take a walk through the town park, the place where they had once been met with cold stares and whispers. But today, they were greeted by familiar faces, warm smiles, and friendly greetings. They passed families picnicking, children playing, and people chatting in small groups. The park was alive, a vibrant symbol of the town's newfound unity. As they walked, Leo spotted a group of younger kids gathered around a bench. He recognized a little girl named Emma, one of the children who had once been sick. Now healthy and full of energy, she waved excitedly at him. "Leo, Dr. Brooks!" she called out, her voice bright and cheerful. "Come over here!" Ryan and Leo walked over, and soon they found themselves surrounded by children eager to share their latest discoveries from the science club. They listened with smiles, watching the joy on the kids' faces, and Ryan felt a profound sense of fulfillment. They had come so far, and seeing the younger generation thriving in an environment of acceptance was the greatest reward he could imagine. Leo looked up at his father, his eyes reflecting a wisdom beyond his years. "Dad," he said softly, "I think we really did change something here." Ryan nodded, his heart swelling with pride. "We did, Leo. And you were at the heart of that change. I couldn't be prouder of the person you've become." As they continued their walk hand in hand, they passed by the town square, where a small plaque had been installed in honor of the town's journey toward unity. It read, "In gratitude to those who taught us the strength of compassion, the courage to embrace change, and the love that binds us all." Ryan and Leo stood in silence, reflecting on the journey that had brought them here. As this heartwarming story comes to an end, we hope it touched you just as deeply as it touched the town of Grayville. Ryan and Leo's journey shows that kindness and resilience can overcome any challenge, and that sometimes, the smallest acts of courage can create ripples that transform entire communities. If you believe in the power of compassion and the strength of unity, help us spread this message to others. Share this story with friends and family who might need a little reminder that love and acceptance can truly change the world. And don't forget, subscribe to our channel, Inspiring Hearts, for more stories that will uplift, inspire, and remind you of the goodness that exists in every corner of life. Join us in building a community that celebrates the beauty of diversity, the courage of compassion, and the impact of kindness. Thank you for watching, and remember, together, we can make the world a little brighter, one story at a time.